Okay, with winning screenwriter Nathan Burt, Lost and Found is the screenplay from the LGBTQ plus film festival. Really interesting film. I can see this being made, and it's not going to cost that much money. With two great actors, and you got yourself a great film because the script is very tight. It's about two best friends, I guess, long lost best friends, meet at the one friend's mother's funeral, unfortunately, and they have a conversation for the rest of the day. How's that for a
Yeah, yeah.
pitch?
That's about it, right? Yeah. I mean, it gets a lot more layered and a lot more dense as it goes on, but that's, part and parcel of what the movie's about for sure. Yeah.
Well, you submitted to this festival, the LGBTQ plus festival, so it kind of gives away a twist a little bit, I guess, right?
Um Maybe kind of. I mean, it's clear that the one character is gay from
Yeah,
the beginning,
yeah.
and as you compare it to the script that I wrote before it, that this is kind of the sequel to, we know throughout that entire script as well that the same character is gay as well
Okay.
too, and so um, as you um, as you think about the characters and as they kind of work their way through the conversation that they're having throughout the movie, it really does at times directly discuss the feelings that the one character has had for the other person in the past, but at other times really kind of dances around it as well too. And it 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 takes a while for them to both kind of realize the impact that that relationship that the two of them had, even though it wasn't a romantic relationship, that the two
Yeah.
of them had on each other as they were growing up.
And this like a lot of us have these relationships. I can think for myself personally where you have this very impactful, kind of emotionally charged friendship or relationship in a certain time in your life where like your emotions are all over the place. You really don't know who you are. You're young, you're stupid, and then you look back on your life and go, "Wow, okay, that's interesting." And most times you don't,
Yeah.
you're not able to go back to that time and have a conversation with that person. But then this is what films are for. And in your film, you kind of give us this in a sense.
Yeah, it's almost a way to kind of rewrite that, sense of maybe an unrequited relationship of what could have potentially
Yeah,
been, and you know, give it something, give it a little bit more weight and remembering back on it and thinking about, just this idea of how you idealize this person and how you idealize the relationship, the connection that you had, but then also, not understanding that there might be other levels and more depths to, their side of things and what they're thinking and how
yeah.
they view their relationship as well too.
And you're able to, like in hindsight, you're able to express your feelings of the past when you're in the moment. You weren't able to express because you didn't even know what was going on. You're like sometimes you're full of emotion, especially when you're young. You need that time and distance to kind of reflect and understand like what was happening then, right? So
Yeah, and to kind of realize it for what it was and to really have it speak to itself in what it was and how it affected you. When you're in it, when you're mired in it and you're stuck in it, you don't really see a way out of
yeah,
it. Um, and that's really kind of whether or not you even know that those feelings are what they are.
yeah.
But then as you kind of continue to get more distance from it, you get a better understanding of what it was, and then um, you can also idealize it in a different way, I guess.
So this is a sequel to another script that you wrote, right?
It is, yeah. So the first film takes place 7 years before this sequel does, and it's about these two best friends who meet in high school, and the impetus for that script really was. this idea that when I was growing up back in the 80s and the 90s, I was a teenager in the 90s, and when I was growing up, we had some movies about teenagers that were thoughtful and um, treated their characters as though they were actually real human beings. But for the majority, it was um, the American Pies or the Friday the 13th or something like that. And both of those have their place, and those genres have their place, and
Yeah.
they have importance within, American cinema landscape, but they also don't necessarily allow for room for these characters or for characters to live and breathe and grow and deal with these complex issues that so many high schoolers are dealing with. You think back maybe to like The Breakfast Club, which is really, kind of like that quintessential 80s teenage film that
Yeah.
really does allow those teenagers to work through those things. And then maybe something else like Say Anything that also allows these things to happen as well too, but they're so few and far between. But every other week we get a slasher film coming out or something that, just doesn't allow for its characters to be real and human and experience all the ups and downs and joys and, gross feelings of being a teenager. And so that is really kind of where um, Missing Persons, which is the first one I wrote, that's kind of where that sprang from because also with that, there were no, I can't think of, except for maybe something like Beautiful Thing from 1996 or something like that, where there were teenagers that were gay in these films as well too, because we were still kind of in the throes of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and we were still within these, while we were, the Clinton era had all of these more progressive politics than the decade that preceded it, we were still kind of living under the shadow and in the closet, right?
But just to go back in the 80s, there if there was a gay character, which there was, it never was said, right? Like it
Or
was just like maybe it was alluded to, but it was never said. It was never like go ahead. Sorry.
right, well, or if it was said, it was generally said as the butt of some sort of
Yeah,
joke, right?
it was like yeah, a content yeah, lesser
And
than person. So yeah.
exactly. And you get I see both sides of the argument. There's that, kind of any exposure that we can get is good and it's going to, move
Yeah.
the community forward, but then also like, well, what if that exposure is also, rooted in stereotypes or rooted in, cultural misappropriation of what the gay community is. And
Sure.
so
Yeah.
as I was writing that, I was really kind of writing a story for myself where I wanted to be able to um, see characters that I know that I would have liked to have seen when I was in high school. And it's kind of like icing on the cake if other people wanted to see it as well too, or other people found value in it. And then I'd said previously when I was answering the questions that I had the idea before I knew anything else about where I wanted Missing Persons to go. I knew what the ending was. And then I kind of worked that script backwards from there. But as I was writing Missing Persons, I knew that I needed to continue with these guys, but I also knew that if I kept going in the way that I wanted to, that script was going to end up being 300 pages long and that it wasn't going to be, it was going to be tantamount to nothing, right? So um, I started thinking about like the Before trilogy where we kind of meet these characters every several years and we kind of catch up with them and we find out what's been happening to them um, throughout that time. And that was kind of my jumping off point for starting Lost and Found, which I started kind of right as I was also writing Missing Persons at the same time.
And these are the only two scripts you've ever written, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I have another one that I'm in the middle of writing right now, but yeah, I these are the first two.
So what got you into because it kind of says like I was just trying to like in the blog interview you said that these characters have been in your head for like over a decade and then but you never wrote anything, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had an idea of what I wanted Missing Persons to be about for a really long time. And I thought that I mean, it's really been the better portion of 2.5 decades that I've really been kind of marinating and thinking about these characters. And I thought that it really needed to be about one thing. And then as certain events kind of started playing out in my life, and I realized that as in tandem with those, that I was also, um, you know, just really kind of henpecking away at this script that I wasn't really doing much with at all. And then once these events happened in my life, it's like everything clicked and I realized that it's still about this, but I also need this to inform this as well too. And I didn't really understand what was happening until this light bulb came on with these things. And then once that happened, it's like, it was just kind of like the floodgates burst open and I was able to actually just kind of pour this script out of my head that um I didn't even know that was sitting there the way that it needed to be sitting there, if that makes sense.
So then that's when you decided to write, to finally write it, is when you kind
Yeah,
of
I mean,
had this
because
epiphany.
it had always been an ambition of mine to be like, hey, I'd love to tell a story of some sort. I
Right.
don't, exactly know what it is, but I'd love to tell a story. The medium of film has been so important and so central to who I am and my identity and growing up. And I always knew that I wanted it to be a part of my life outside of just viewing and just outside of just sitting and watching it. Um, and so, um, but I don't really have any connections to that industry. I didn't really know how to like kind of work my way into it to begin with. So I was like, well, hey, you want to write this story, you might as well write this story and just kind of see if anything comes of it.
Gotcha. And then so like because in your blog and it said that you worked back in the day, you worked at a video store
I
back when they
did.
had
Yeah.
video stores. And so you're
Yeah.
like, so the question I was gonna ask is that why script? But of course it seems like why not a novel? But of course it's like this is part of you. Like movies are a part of you, very much so. So why not a script, I guess?
Yeah. For sure. And over the years, I work in education. And so I've kind of been, over the years, I've been trained in research. And so as I start thinking about screenplays and writing them, I think about it almost kind of from a research point of view of like, where are the holes that are missing? Like, what are the stories that haven't really been told? And
Well, it's an
I'm
interesting way
not
to look
saying,
at it. Okay.
yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not saying that, my script is the most original thing on the planet
No,
and oh my gosh, this is gonna, be the foundation, the seminal foundation for all these other screenplays. But um
but you're
it,
talking from like a mainstream point of view, I guess, right? Like from a
yeah,
Hollywood Western kind of like filling in the blanks of like of original story of a story that is entertaining, kind of like can hit the pulp culture medium, but also kind of is missing from our from the from is that all movies behind your back? Behind your
no,
script?
those are actually books. My movies are in another room. They
Okay, so
they
you
take
have okay, so you have a whole new room. You
yeah.
got the Batman. So what I'm trying to say is that that's it. Like you say that this is a story that obviously it's been touched upon, but it hasn't been kind of shown yet, I guess, in a sense.
Or maybe not necessarily in this way. And I mean, if
Yeah.
there are
Well, that's
movies
sort of what
that,
I'm. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think that there are movies that really um that just kind of strike gold, that kind of like live in these two different worlds, and then all of a sudden, kind of out of nowhere, like it becomes this surprise sleeper or something like that.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily have any delusions that that's what's going to happen with this movie by any means, but I mean, I'm thrilled, of course, if that ended up happening.
Yeah. Gotcha. And so, okay, so then you basically have you written short stories before? You written like
Um,
okay. So
the
then
the only
you
thing I've ever written are paper upon paper upon paper for grad school. So
gotcha. Yeah.
that's it.
So then I'm assuming you read scripts before you started writing?
Not really. I mean, I've read a handful of them, just the ones that, I've loved as I've been growing up. I've read them, but never for the purposes of like, all right, I got to figure out like how this is formatted. I got to figure out how
Yeah,
people go from act one to act two to act three, or how those things really work. Even just kind of like the physical formatting of it. I've never really read them from that standpoint,
yeah,
because I think over the years I've gotten that from watching the movies.
sure.
But in terms of reading scripts, I've read maybe five or six my entire life.
But so then you had to learn the structure first. You had to learn the
Yep.
practicals of writing a script, and
Yeah, it
then
was a ton of trial by fire.
you just sort of wrote a draft. I'm assuming you got a draft completed, and then started going back and kind of revising.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I could revise these scripts every day for the rest of my life
Sure.
and never feel like they're actually finished. And I have to kind of restrict and put my own moratorium on that editing, because if I don't, I'll never stop.
Yeah,
So,
it's the same way with making movies. It's like you don't finish it. You just have to abandon it. And you have to like, okay. But then with your scripts, like say someone like wants to make it into a movie, then that you can start revising it from that standpoint with when the machine starts happening, right? Like the director's
yeah.
vision and then the actors and then kind of like the tone, trying to figure out the exact tone of the script. So
I think I could. And I think it's a question of like, these characters are really kind of near and dear to me, and so like thinking about what would I be willing to give up, what would I be willing to rewrite or rethink about or restructure, so that it kind of satisfies what other people envision it should be, but then also kind of remains true to what I originally had idealized for it.
yeah. Well, did you ever like this is not easy what you did, like starting like this and kind of like grinding it out because it is a grind, right?
Yeah, it is for sure.
Did you
Um,
was
I'm
there
sorry, go
what
ahead.
I was gonna say any struggles, any like kind of like sometimes you get in your head and you think that you're not very good, all these things, right? All these insecurities that race in our brains.
Yeah, and absolutely for sure. And so I think I had to keep reminding myself that like on some level this work and this writing started for me as a way to just kind of um maybe exercise some kind of demons about things, right?
It's
Or maybe
therapeutic.
kind of get out. Yeah. And then as it turns into this thing that could potentially become, viable, then I start thinking about like, how can other people view this? Can other people see this? Can other people connect with it? Can they relate to it? And I think that that really is kind of however it lands, if it stays here, if it ends up being made into something like, can people connect with it? And is it something that people can say, yeah, I can see myself in that. I understand what these characters are doing.
So who are these characters? Are they like there's a versions of you in it, versions of a friend? Like are they people that you know? Like I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So, the Abraham character is 100% me, outside of the fact that he's a
And you
filthy
called
writer.
yourself Abraham.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so like my original idea was that in all of the scripts, everyone was going to have a name that was from a 60s or 70s song.
Okay.
So,
I was thinking
like,
presidents, but go ahead. Yeah.
no, no.
Yeah.
So Abraham and Martin come from that Dion song,
Okay.
Abraham
Yeah.
Martin.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, um, and and all the other subsequent characters that follow have names from other songs as well too. But so Abraham is definitely me, or definitely the character that I think closest represents me and who I am and how I've navigated the world and how I grew up, and how these different things have played out in my life to kind of shape who I am today. But then the Martin character is really this combination of three just lovely, incredible, wonderful human beings that I was so fortunate to come across in high school, when it was really kind of, arguably the lowest point of my life. And to have these people just kind of step in and serve in these ways that they didn't even know that they were doing, um, at the time. This is really like these scripts are really kind of like this love letter, this thank you note to them for what they've done for me.
Are some of those people still in your life now, or?
All three of them are to some extent, some
Oh,
more
wow.
than others. But yeah, I mean, I was it was great to be that generation that started college and AOL Instant Messenger had just started, and
Yeah.
um, email was just kind of blooming and stuff like
I
that. So
think
you
we're
had
I think we're
ways.
the same age. Yeah. I had the same
Yeah,
experience.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it was great. That was kind of like this great way of staying in contact with people, and inevitably your relationships change over time, right? As
Sure.
you grow as a person, as they grow as a person, as different things happen. But I think what remains the same is this that core feeling of who these people were, and how they affected my life, and you know, this is my way of saying thank you, I guess.
There's something like, sorry, just a quick segue going back to that time because you just got me all nostalgic. There was something very natural about these new inventions, like the email, you call it the instant messengers. People don't even know what that is now, but it's sort of like
Yeah,
texting, but it was on the
yeah,
computer. But there was something that was so natural for me that even though it was brand new, it felt like I was doing it for my whole life. If that makes any
yeah. I
sense.
I completely agree. And I think to this day, I say the most important class that I ever had in high school was typing,
I
because
say the same
with
thing. I said that. I think I just said it the other day. They don't even teach that anymore in school.
I mean, if they do, I'm sure they start teaching at a younger age, right?
Yeah.
But I mean,
No, but I don't think they teach it anymore because kids from grade one are already on the computers, right? So in most schools.
yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
wild, but I mean, there is no other class that I can think of that has affected my life more
Yeah.
than that.
100%. I would like I yeah, I like I it's so funny that you mentioned that. Okay, I have to ask you the question because you said that also in the blog interview that you when you were young, you kept a record of every movie you watched. Like you wrote
Yeah,
like a kind
yeah.
of like a review or
No, I mean, I did a little bit of that, but actually, in another lifetime, I was living in Hawaii, and I actually did a. My friend was trying to create this startup arts magazine, and I told her I would do some movie review writing for her back then. But I mean, that I have no idea where that stuff
it
even is
didn't work
anymore.
out, I
But
guess. Yeah.
um, but as a no, it was more of just like I wrote down every movie that I saw, and
Yeah.
so I mean, I continue that
Okay,
to
gotcha. Gotcha. Do you still do that now?
yeah, yeah. Every movie I watch, I write down and then I transfer it to. It used to just be all in these journals that I still have, but it's now all digital now.
So what's the first movie that you wrote down in your book?
Geez, that is a great question. I don't even that I don't know. That is something that I don't know that I even have that log anymore, because I transferred it all to a Google Doc, and it's gotten so big that I've had to kind of separate into two different Google Docs at this point. But um the first I mean, the first movie I remember seeing. I remember going to see some re-release of Snow White in the theater with my aunt. I remember going to see some re-release of 101 Dalmatians that came out. Um, Labyrinth, I remember seeing in the theaters. Um, but as far as like the first one, I don't know. That's a great question.
So you put in your blog interview that the movie asked you the movie that you watched the most times in your life, and you
Yep.
referenced the video store that you guys used to watch. When were you like a teenager when you were to the video store?
No, I was in my it was from 20 to 25 that I worked
Okay.
there. So 2000 to no 2001 to 2000, just the very beginning 2006
So you were at the tail end
when I
of
worked.
the doom of the video store.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I mean, that was a gift to be able to do that now in hindsight, right? To be able to have that job and to be able to work like that. Um, because I mean, I loved going as a kid to the store, but then being able to work there at the time, it probably wasn't as it wasn't as lovely as I'm trying to remember it as
Sure.
it was now. But I mean, how cool to kind of work at a job that doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah. And people probably think it's crazy. Like 10 years, these kids will say, "What? Well, what is that? Like a video
Yeah,
store?"
yeah, for
Right?
sure.
So okay, so you put down Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, not the first one, but the second one, right?
Yep,
And
yep.
then I guess the prequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark gets a little
Yeah,
gory,
yeah, yeah.
right? I
It
remember
is.
seeing that
Yeah.
in the theater with my
Yeah.
my dad and my sister. And then you got Pee-wee's Big Adventure, which
Oh
is
yeah. Yep.
classic, right?
Yeah.
Back to the Beach,
Yeah.
then
Yep.
Beetlejuice, which I just saw for the first time in my life, like a month ago.
Really?
Yeah, I've
That's
never saw.
interesting.
I saw the first one, then I watched the second one.
What'd you
I
think?
never watched it before in my life.
That is
You
funny.
know,
I
there's some movies
remember
that just like I watch a lot of movies too, but movies that just some movies that just you just never watch, like they just get away,
they just
right?
somehow escape you, right?
Yeah,
And you're like, I have no business having not seen this movie yet, but somehow I've just not seen it.
yeah. So Back to the Beach, was that Annette Funicello? It was Frankie Avalon, right? That's Pee Wee
Yep.
Herman.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
he's in that movie
Yeah,
too, right?
he does a little cameo in there for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you got True Beverly Hills, which is
Yep.
Shelley Long, at her best, right? It's like it's a lost treasure.
It's an incredible movie, and um I love this little renaissance that it's kind of had recently with maybe in like the last 10 years or so, and this kind of um this love from not only the gay community but also from people from all different walks of life really seem to like the movie and um relate to it, and I think that there's a lot more going on with it than you might just see on the surface. I think there's a lot more that you can kind of plumb from it than what is
So
there.
that was my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, basically was telling me that she loved this movie, True Beverly Hills, when she was a kid. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
we'll watch, let's watch it. This is like 11, 12
yeah,
years ago. I couldn't find it anywhere. It just wasn't anywhere. Like nowhere to be found. And this is what I do for a living. I could not find it. So I eventually found it.
yeah.
Someone had a burn like DVD that I bought like
Oh,
online
interesting.
somewhere, and they mailed it to me.
Uh-huh.
And I think we still have it, but it's like now it's like you said, now it's everywhere. Now it's like on different streaming services,
Yeah,
but because I guess it does have the renaissance, but it was just one of those movies that just like left. It was just like, like there was you couldn't get it anywhere, but now you can get now, like I
yeah,
said, it's just so funny. Yeah, and it's the first time I watched it with her when we got it.
for
So
sure. Yeah, and there's I always have this worry that that nostalgia kind of clouds my judgment of certain movies, and I'm like,
yeah.
oh, can I really kind of objectively stand back from this and say this is a really good movie? And maybe I can't. I don't know, but it's just one of those movies that I think that there are things that are more things going on with it than what might
It
be
is. Yeah,
on
it
the
has
surface of it.
depth to it for sure. Yeah. And she's fantastic. Like, like
So fun.
she's a lost, like, well, she got her Cheers run and she was like, Diane is like a great, fantastic character. She's so brilliant on that show, but she didn't really have the movie career that she probably hoped to have,
Absolutely.
but she's fantastic.
And I don't know why that is. I've always found her like even if I've not necessarily liked the movie that she was in, I've always found her very warm and engaging, and I've always liked watching her act. And so, who knows how and why certain people take off and other people's don't, and certain mediums work for some people and others don't. I mean, I have no idea, but I've always really liked her.
Yeah. All right, so you said you're working on your third screenplay now. Is that the trilogy or is that something different or
That's a good question. No, it's a different story, but um, in the past, actually, week or so, Abraham and Martin have kind of started crowding my mind again. And so I have been doing some pretty extensive outlining for where I want to take these guys for one last one last run, I think. I think that it's enough to keep them at three, and certainly the first film and the second film certainly end on notes where you don't know what's going to happen next with these people, and which are my favorite kinds of endings,
yeah,
because I want people to be able to fill that in for themselves. I want them to this is where I want to go with this. This is where I want to take these people if I care about them, and um, you know, for the purposes of a third movie, I think I have it down to where I can finally kind of have a definitive ending for this story with them, and what I think would hopefully kind of like lay them to rest in terms of their lives as characters on screen.
Mhm. So you got the bug now. I'm assuming you got the screenwriter's bug. You want to keep writing.
That's all I want to do. I mean, it's so funny. I can't think of anything else that I've ever done in my life where I've been able to stop and actually say to myself, my God, I actually love doing this. I actually love this process. I love the idea that I have no idea where I have an outline, I have a general idea where I'm going to take things, but things just kind of come up in the moment, and I kind of, chase down that trail and see if it leads anywhere. And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And I love that act of kind of discovering things that I didn't even know were up here, right?
Yeah,
And it's such a great feeling. It's so rewarding.
that's amazing. Well, congratulations on everything so far, and even like getting it out there, submitting to festivals like ours, and kind of seeing some reactions. Hope that experience has been good for you so far. And do you have any expectations or
I mean, it's been great so far. It's been wonderful. I mean, again, it all feels like icing to me, right? These were things that I started kind of just for myself, and the fact that um, other people are seeing it and or reading it and being like, hey, there might be something here. It's just great. Do I have any expectations? No, I never do. With anything that I do, I certainly have hopes. I certainly have wishes that I hope come
sure?
true, but no, it's the quickest way to disappointment, right? So
Yeah.
just I what happens happens, and if something takes off from it, man, what a blessing. It'd be great.
Well, let's keep in touch. Hopefully, you keep writing, and we can talk again when you write your next winning script.
Will do. Will do. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you.